afternoon, bon après-midi, bienvenue, and welcome to the National Managers Community Managers Connect virtual talks for September 2nd, 2021. Today, we are talking about employee mental health and finding out how EAP helps managers. Donc aujourd'hui, nous allons parler de la santé mentale des employés et de la manière dont les services du PAE pour gestionnaires peuvent aider. Je suis Lisette Savard, Regional Lead for the Prairies and Northwest Territories, donc dirigeante régionale pour la région des Prairies et des Territoires du Nord-Ouest. Donc, veuillez noter que cet événement est enregistré. Please note that our event today will be recorded and a YouTube video link will be made available following our session. As we move through today's session, please share your comments in the chat space and questions by using the Q&A button in the language of your choice. You can vote for questions you like by clicking on the thumbs up button. So, au fur et à mesure que nous progressons dans la session d'aujourd'hui, veuillez partager vos questions en utilisant le bouton questions et réponses, Q&A au bas de la page, dans la langue officielle de votre choix. Vous pouvez voter pour les questions que vous voulez poser en cliquant sur le bouton thumbs up. Please note that your cameras and mics are automatically disabled. Donc, vos caméras et vos micros sont en sourdine. Before we start, I want to acknowledge that I am on Treaty 1 territory, and the land on which I gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, et la patrie de la nation métisse. I invite you to take a moment to reflect on the land on which you sit. Donc, j'aimerais reconnaître que je suis située sur le territoire visé par le traité numéro 1 et que les terres sur lesquelles je me trouve font partie du territoire traditionnel des peuples Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota et Dene et de la patrie de la nation métisse. Je vous invite à prendre un instant pour réfléchir au territoire sur lequel vous vous trouvez. Virtual talks are just one of the several ways the NMC is working to engage over 40,000 managers and aspiring leaders across the country on topics of importance to you. Les conversations virtuelles est un des multiples moyens de la CNG pour rejoindre plus de 40 000 gestionnaires et aspirants gestionnaires à travers le pays, couvrant les différents sujets qui vous sont importants. For today's session, we have the pleasure of welcoming our special guests, Chantal Mallette, National Manager, Business and Customer Relations, Employee Assistance Services at Health Canada, Michelle John, Manager of Specialized Organizational Services and Alternative Dispute Resolution Services, Employee Assistance Services at Health Canada, Marie-Paul Deveau, EAP Coordinator Counselor at the Canada Border Services Agency, and hosted by my colleague, Hélène Larose, NMC Regional Lead for the National Capital Region. La discussion d'aujourd'hui se tiendra dans les deux langues officielles. Donc, soyez à l'aise d'utiliser votre langue officielle de préférence. Nous tenons à créer un climat de sécurité linguistique, alors vous pouvez choisir d'utiliser votre deuxième langue officielle si c'est votre préférence aujourd'hui. The Managers Connect virtual talks are bilingual, so feel free to use the official language of your choice in an atmosphere of linguistic security, whether that be your first official language or your second official language. I know we're all looking forward to an engaging session, so without further delay, je cède la parole à Hélène, Chantal, Michelle et Marie-Paul. À toi, Hélène.
Merci, Lisbeth. Most people know that the Employee Assistance Program offers a variety of services for employees who struggle with personal or work-related situations. Our guests will take some time to remind you of those services. But what we really want to emphasize is how EAP can help you in your management role. What are the specific services that are available to help you when you encounter a situation with an employee who struggles with mental health issues? And what are some possible examples of situations and the tools available? Nos invités aujourd'hui viennent de Santé Canada et de l'Agence des services frontaliers du Canada. Santé Canada agit comme fournisseur externe pour plusieurs ministères. On appelle ces services SAE ou Services d'aide aux employés, EAS in English. Certains ministères ont leur service externe avec une compagnie privée, alors que d'autres ont des conseillers professionnels à l'interne. et d'autres ont une combinaison entre des services externes, des services internes. Ils peuvent même avoir des pairs aidants pour complémenter ces services. In order to find out who your department's EAP provider is, you can go to the link that my colleague will post in the chat. And note that most services that will be presented today are available to all departments, no matter who your service provider is. They are all services that are mandated by Treasury Board. Donc, la plupart des services présentés aujourd'hui sont disponibles à tous les ministères, peu importe votre fournisseur de services. Ces services sont tous mandatés par le Conseil du Trésor. Donc, dans un instant, je vais céder la parole à nos invités et ensuite, il y aura une période de questions. In a moment, I'll turn it over to our guests and then we'll go to the question period. If we don't have time to answer all the questions, I'll follow up in about a week with an email with the answers to the remaining questions. So I'll start by asking my first question to Chantal. Chantal, all departments are required to provide EAP services to employees. Can you tell us more about them? Donc, tous les ministères doivent fournir les services du PAE aux employés. Peux-tu nous en dire plus? À toi, Chantal.
Bonjour, merci Hélène. So as per Treasury Board, board policy on the EAP, each department must offer an employee assistance program to their employees. So we cover most of the federal public service, but as Hélène was saying, you may consult your HR or intranet to see who your EAP provider is. You'll also be provided with a link to Treasury Board's website with all the EAP providers for each department. So I'll provide you with a very, very quick overview. Normally a session is about 1 hour, so let's just go through it. And my main importance of the session today is mainly to illustrate the similarities between all EAPs and what it offers to you and how we can help you managers with helping your employees. What is normally offered by EAP, but you may want to reach out to your EAP again to know what is exactly provided, but normally the EAP provides a free psychological support to all of your employees, so it doesn't cost anything to the employee to access those services. And it's also available to immediate family members. Also, the service is available 24/7, and the TTY for deaf or hearing impaired employees is also available 24/7. The service is totally confidential. I think maybe one thing I can recommend is if you're meeting with an employee and you're suggesting the EAP, I think it's so important to indicate to the employee that although you're making the referral or helping the employee to access the EAP is strictly confidential. The manager or managers or directors or executive will not be aware that you are using the service. Usually what happens is that in terms of invoicing, we never ask you for which section you work, which direction. So obviously we don't have this information and we don't need it. We really want each employee to have access to a free, confidential, professional counseling support to help them to stay healthy while being in the workplace at the same time. So normally there's a phone number to access your EAP, and normally mental health professionals are answering this at this number. And the EAP is normally also able to provide immediate counseling services, meaning if the employee is in crisis, there will be a mental health professional connecting with you and being able to speak with you and diffuse the crisis right away. Just to let you know, in terms of, this is our statistics, but you may find it interesting to know that for the first 3 months following COVID, so March, April, and May, it was the utilization of the service was really, really low. I think everybody was trying to take care of their families, and but since then it really picked up, and our crisis calls have increased by 50%. So that gives you an idea that the EAP is such an important resource to help your employees. And although you promote the program, there's a lot of employees calling us and they've never heard about the EAP or they don't know where to reach us. So I would strongly recommend to work with your EAP with a promotional plan. And I certainly recommend to talk about the EAP in communication quite often. So employees know exactly where to go and they don't have to look for services when they actually need them. So we refer also to, we have a network of 900 mental health professionals across Canada. Other EAPs have networks as well. And our goal is to refer the employee to someone close to either where they live or where they work. Although right now we mostly work from home. And it's possible for family members to consult not only where the employee works, but anywhere in Canada. So for example, if the employee has a child at the university, the child can consult us. And again, services for family members, as well as children, they're completely confidential. So as an employee, you will not be made aware that a family member is accessing the EAP. So it's confidential for each member of the family. We offer short-term psychological support. Normally that's the goal of EAP, which is short-term. We have a model where most departments receive up to 8 hours. So from 1 to 8 hours if the issue can be resolved in that time frame. But again, please check with your EAP because it may differ. Some offer more, some offer a little bit less. But again, this is a great service and this is something you really want to access, especially these times where psychological resources are really rare and difficult to access. Referral resources are also provided if the employee requires long-term. So in the case where an employee requires long-term counseling, we can use the sessions covered under the program to support and bridge the person until they access long-term services. Donc, une référence à un groupe, si une personne, par exemple, veut communiquer avec nous et veut parler à un professionnel de la santé mentale qui fait partie d'une communauté plus spécifique ou sous-représentée, comme par exemple, c'est possible de demander pour un conseiller qui est autochtone ou qui a de l'expérience à travailler avec les employés autochtones. Des gens peuvent demander aussi d'être référés à des conseillers qui travaillent avec la communauté LGBTQ2+, ou encore la communauté noire. Donc, on vous encourage fortement, s'il y a des besoins spéciaux ou vous sentez que vous avez un besoin, de communiquer ce besoin-là au moment où vous faites appel au PAE pour clairement identifier vos besoins et qu'on puisse tenter d'y répondre le plus rapidement possible. Aussi, comme tous les autres PAE, normalement, on fait une promotion. Il devrait y avoir des newsletters ou des communications qui peuvent être distribuées à vos employés. Donc, encore une fois, ce serait important de s'assurer que les employés ont accès à ces communications-là. Il y a du matériel promotionnel dans tous les PAE, donc vous pouvez encore une fois demander du matériel promotionnel pour les distribuer à vos employés. Et évidemment, plusieurs employés croient que le PAE, c'est uniquement pour des problèmes reliés au travail, mais on voit que chez nous, en tout cas, ça doit être la même chose partout, la majorité des employés consultent pour des problèmes personnels qui, en fait, les affectent dans le milieu de travail aussi. Donc, la proportion, normalement, pour nous, chez nous, de gens qui communiquent avec nous pour le travail, c'est à peu près 15%. Et la grande majorité par rapport à un couple, un deuil, la perte d'un être cher, le stress beaucoup par rapport à la pandémie en ce moment. On offre aussi des services de trauma. Donc, s'il y avait une situation traumatique en milieu de travail, le gestionnaire, normalement, communique avec le PAE et on peut avoir un conseiller, un professionnel en santé mentale sur place qui viendra normalement dans les 24-48 heures qui suivent l'événement pour rencontrer les employés qui ont été témoins de l'événement. On a aussi des services aux gestionnaires, advisory services. Donc, les gestionnaires qui désirent consulter en tant que gestionnaire, non pas pour des problèmes personnels, mais en tant que gestionnaire, ils veulent aider un employé, ils veulent avoir des outils pour rencontrer un employé par rapport à la performance au travail ou à quoi que ce soit, avoir des conversations difficiles. Donc, on peut aussi vous épauler puis donner des outils par rapport à tout ça. Je vous parle de LiveSpeak. C'est une plateforme virtuelle que nous, on offre. Donc, on offre plus de 1000 vidéos par des experts sur différents sujets, des blogs, clavardage. Il y a un chat mensuel avec un professionnel dans le domaine. Encore une fois, ça peut être deuil, nutrition, méditation, bien-être, etc. Et il y a aussi une application, donc on peut y accéder. LiveSpeak, c'est un exemple d'outils virtuels avec des vidéos, mais normalement, les programmes d'aide aux employés vont avoir différents outils qui vont aussi pouvoir vous informer sur toute une gamme de sujets. Et je vous encourage aussi à faire la promotion de ces services-là auprès de vos employés parce que souvent, ils ne savent pas nécessairement comment y avoir accès, ils ne savent pas nécessairement. Donc, souvent, avant une réunion d'équipe, peut-être juste en parler ou partir une petite vidéo, voir, utiliser l'outil pour que les gens puissent voir comment on utilise et comment intéressant c'est. Il y a des gestionnaires qui décident de choisir une vidéo puis qui envoient ça environ toutes les 2 semaines pour une journée de bien-être. Alors, ils envoient une petite vidéo que directement un lien et les employés peuvent visionner facilement. Donc, encore une fois, ça aide les employés à explorer les outils déjà disponibles. Sur ce, c'est très, très court. On a beaucoup, beaucoup d'autres services. Michel va en parler davantage, mais je vous invite à communiquer avec votre PAE pour avoir une session d'information gratuite pour vos équipes. Donc, si vous avez une rencontre d'équipe, je vous encourage fortement à communiquer avec nous ou avec votre programme d'aide aux employés. Word of the end, I strongly recommend you managers to contact your EAP in order to plan or access free information sessions on EAP services offered in your department. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chantal. Those are great tips and great information. My next question will be to Michel. Michel, can you tell us more about the services that are specifically available for managers to help them in their role? Donc, plus d'informations sur les services spécifiques pour les gestionnaires.
Merci, Hélène. Thank you so much. That's really an excellent question. And always keep in mind that today we're talking about how to help support managers in the lens of mental health and wellness. And ultimately, it's to help support their teams, right? That's what we're looking at. Managers are looking to do that. And with the new realities of working from home, going from an in-person office space to that piece, there's been a lot of change that's happened in the last little while as well. So I'll go over a few options and a few supports, but otherwise know that often a lot of these supports can be customized to what you're looking for as well. So I'd encourage you to contact your own EAP provider to get more information to make sure that we're better speaking to what we can do in these situations. So one of the things I would perhaps mention is equipping a manager to be able to deliver difficult news. So in addition to EAP, being able to access some support, say someone unfortunately were to pass away or there's an illness that took place with a colleague, how would we otherwise help support that manager to be able to deliver that news? We can often call on supports and services such as ourselves to have a counselor to come help perhaps prepare that little speech, that little encounter of what that'll look like with the team, and otherwise to help that counselor also normalize some of the symptoms that one may be experiencing initially when such news is to be delivered. So it's not only important to take care of oneself and the manager in terms of the stress that may come along with it in delivering that news, but also to otherwise how to take care of your team as well. And then that complements otherwise the EAP, that one-on-one support that can be offered as well. Un autre service, je dirais, c'est très important, c'est vraiment des services de coaching. Ça, je trouve ça tellement important en ce moment. Il y a beaucoup de gestionnaires qui ont eu la chance de travailler avec une équipe qui connaît bien. Il y en a d'autres qui connaissent moins bien leur équipe. Donc, avoir la chance de travailler une professionnelle pour être capable de dire c'est quoi, comment est-ce que je peux engager mon équipe, comment est-ce que je peux avoir une communication très efficace. Donc, ça, c'est très important. Puis aussi, un service de coaching de carrière. Ça peut être important aussi pour des gestionnaires, mais peut-être aussi pour des employés aussi. Donc, c'est un autre genre de service, soit pour la planification de carrière, mais même la préparation à la retraite aussi. C'est quelque chose de très, très important à regarder aussi. Then I would say, you know, there's other aspects to help support workplace wellness and perhaps to address issues that come along as well. It's not uncommon that we may have a manager that contacts us and says, listen, there's something that's working well in our team, but there's perhaps something that's working a little less well, but I can't seem to put my finger on it. So what is it? And we may try to engage a provider, a professional at that point, to otherwise come into the office or virtually in this case, to either do some interviews, some focus groups, the team, what could be improved. And that's to otherwise support management to be able to kind of equip them to have those conversations, to see what's working well, to make sure we're supporting that, but maybe what's working a little less well to kind of give some suggestions on that front as well. So that's one thing there that I would say is extremely important in a service that can be offered to help support managers. The other thing I would say is, you know, it could also be to help support engagement and team spirit. So whether it's a team charter, getting someone to come in and help that. So otherwise support managers, support their employees again. So it always comes back down to the same thing as well. And lastly, I'd say COVID-19 has had a reality on us that's quite different than beforehand. So we've been called on to provide services not only for managers and employees, but to help otherwise working from home, how to lead a team working virtually at this point. La stress, la résilience, c'est tous des sujets qu'on trouve c'est très important. So I would close with that piece there, only to say, don't hesitate to ask some questions at our point if we can help provide some more clarity or any other supports that we can provide as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. After working in EAP for 17 years, I know that these services are not always widely known. Managers are often surprised to find out everything that is offered to them. So I hope that you learned something today so far. Now I'll turn it over to Marie-Paul. Marie-Paul, what are some examples of situations where a manager went to EAP for advice or advisory services? Quels sont des exemples fictifs de situations où les gestionnaires ont utilisé les services conseils du PAE?
Merci, Hélène. Thank you. So building a bit on what Michelle was talking about, so she mentioned advisory services or coaching. I just want to preface by saying that as a coordinator counselor in an internal EAP program, we're there as a complementary or additional service. We're not there to replace labor relations or any other resource that you have as a manager. But when we provide advisory or services or coaching, we do it in a confidential space, one-on-one. Is sort of, we can become that sounding board for you to discuss a situation and not have to worry about any repercussions. So to answer your question, Hélène, in terms of specific examples, so Michelle was mentioning difficult conversations. So an example would be an employee contacting their EAP counselor because they have a performance review coming up with an employee, and they're worried about news that they may have to deliver within this review, or a disciplinary measure. So a manager might call and express, that they've done all of their homework in terms of, checking with labor relations and seeing what it is that they have to have in order. But then contacting EAP to say, listen, I'm concerned about this employee's well-being. I'm not sure that they're going to react very well to this news. This is what I know about the person. Can you sort of help me just look at it from the perspective of mental health and wellness? So it gives a safe space to discuss those things and to think about some flags, what to look out for, what resources they may be able to offer the employee should the employee react in a particular way. So you can think of it sort of as am I forgetting something? I'm preparing to deliver this news, and it's kind of, either keeping me up at night or worrying me a little bit. And I just want to make sure that I've covered as many angles as possible. So we're just there. We're not there to tell you what to do. We're really there as sort of an outsider, able to help you look at the situation from different perspectives. So the message with that kind of example is, don't feel like you're stuck with anything. There's always someone that can sort of look at it more closely with you. So un autre exemple en soutien direct aux employés serait, par exemple, on est inquiet pour un employé pour X raisons. Peut-être qu'on est au courant d'une situation que vit l'employé dans sa vie privée. On l'a entendu soit à travers les branches ou l'employé nous l'a confié. Puis, on veut s'assurer que l'employé va bien. On lui a proposé le PAE, mais l'employé ne semble pas intéressé. Fait que ça arrive des fois qu'un gestionnaire va nous appeler et dire « Écoute, je pense que cette personne-là pourrait bénéficier d'une aide. Je lui ai proposé le PAE. On m'a fait comprendre que ce n'était pas vraiment d'intérêt. Alors, qu'est-ce que je peux faire? » Donc, un autre exemple de conversation où est-ce qu'on dit « OK, mais moi, souvent, j'aborde cette conversation-là en disant « Ben, il faut donner des choix. » Quand on présente le PAE, est-ce qu'on explique vraiment les choix qu'a l'employé? Ou si l'employé ne veut pas le PAE, qu'est-ce qui existe dans sa communauté? Fait que nous, on peut être là pour parler d'autres ressources qui existent dans la communauté. Et si l'employé veut vraiment pas d'aide, mais on peut aider le gestionnaire à garder un œil sur s'il y a des changements dans le comportement. Donc, un coaching dans le sens de comment continuer à faire attention à cet employé-là sans devenir intrusif ou sentir qu'on pousse les ressources sur lui ou elle. Un autre dans ce sens-là, another example, and maybe this one is a bit less frequent, but it can happen. So you're with an employee at a time of great difficulty, and you're able to have a conversation with them about maybe getting some even short-term support. So a manager can call EAP in the presence of an employee with their permission and just introduce themselves, who they are, say they're with such and such employee, and we're calling today for whatever reason. And from there, sometimes it can facilitate that first contact. EAP can sort of take over from there with the employee's permission and offer either to guide towards appropriate resources or do a quick evaluation of what's going on, making sure the employee is safe. But it's a way to, at a time where you feel the pressure and that maybe there's more to the situation than what you feel you can handle in the moment as a manager, that you could contact us or your own EAP, of course. And another example is around suicide prevention. So we've had managers, contact EAP, whether they're concerned specifically about an employee or it's a question that they'd like to address with their team. A lot of times people are sort of uncomfortable with how to broach the topic. So may have a manager calling on that specific topic, which we know is not specific to work. It's everybody can be touched by issues of suicide. So a manager can call and in a specific situation say, I need to approach someone and I'm worried that maybe suicide is an issue. So we can provide step-by-step coaching on how do you go about bringing up the subject, asking the question, and how do you react? Like if this is the question, the response that you get, how do you react? If you get a yes versus a no, and then what resources can we direct employees towards? So in terms of, those are some examples that are specific to supporting employees directly. But another type of coaching can be, and I think one of the colleagues was mentioning, in support to the team. So during the pandemic, for example, might have had a manager contact EAP and say, listen, there's like a new dynamic with this people working from home and the managers, and we're sensing that the management team is kind of getting tired. What can we do? An example could be have the EAP into one of your team meetings, either to just talk about the services or have a facilitated discussion where you can sort of do take the pulse of the team. How are they doing? And it's a space where managers, or you could do that with your team of employees as well, could speak as little as much as they want. But we offer an opportunity to come together and just talk about change and how it's impacting us each individually and as a group. What tends to happen in those cases is that people are quicker to reach out individually if they need anything. So by experience, every time we come in, meet with a team, have one of these discussions, we tend to have a few referrals from there, like self-referrals, people will call. Another one may be, the managers notice that there is a specific issue that seems to be preoccupied on their employees' minds or has been discussed in a team meeting. So we'd like to have, a presentation on such and such issue. It could be about, the stress of an important workload, or it could be on sleep hygiene. It could be on whatever the team may find that is of importance to them. Michelle had mentioned earlier providing a more tailored programming or service. So that's an example of what we can do. In our department, a specific example as well is when a manager, or at whatever level, by the way, it doesn't really matter if you're managing frontline employees or you're at a director level. This is an opportunity for any of you. So one example that I thought was really good to share is someone from management contacting EAP saying, I've noticed that like a climate of fatigue that's sort of taken over, and I want to do something about it. So they have a conversation about what that might look like. And from that came, and one of my colleagues was able to develop a program on developing manager resilience. So it turned out to be 3 sessions of 45 minutes, standalone. They were open to managers across a region to sign up for. And again, a sort of safe space where people can come together and talk about how they're impacted by, in this case, obviously everything that came with the COVID-19 pandemic. But it turned out to be a very well attended event, and that now we are looking to do in other regions of the agency as well. So those are some examples that I can think of. There's obviously many, many more. But I guess the message is that if you find yourself in a situation, whether it's regarding your entire team or an employee in particular, you're never truly alone. You can always call. It may be one conversation. It may be a few follow-up conversations to see how things went, or to debrief something that a difficult conversation that you had with an employee, but we're there. You can't always see us, but we're there and ready to support in that way. That'll be it.
Okay. Thank you very much, Marie-Paul. Very interesting information, great examples. So I'm hoping that the participants in today's session are able to think about examples where they can reach out to EAP for support. I will now turn it over to Lisbeth for the question period. Lisbeth?
Oui, OK. Alors, un gros merci à Hélène, Chantal, Michelle, and Marie-Paul. So thanks again for sharing all of this information. So at this time, I'm going to go through the questions in the Q&A. So again, just a bit of a reminder that this isn't the ideal time to bring up specific employee situations, just in terms of preserving confidentiality. Donc, un petit rappel de ne pas partager des informations spécifiques par rapport à un employé en raison de la confidentialité qu'on veut préserver ici. Donc, aussi, si vous avez besoin de soutien pour une situation très spécifique, on vous encourage à contacter votre programme de PAE. Donc, we did encourage you to contact your EAP provider if you'd like to get advice on a specific case. So let me just have a look at the questions. And I'll start with, I guess, the ones that have the most thumbs up. Okay, so the first question is there a limit on how often a manager can consult EAP for advice on issues they are working through with an employee? So for example, a cap on the number of sessions per year, for instance, or is it per issue? Donc la question c'est, par rapport à est-ce qu'il existe une limite de fois qu'un gestionnaire peut consulter le PAE quand ça vient à des cas spécifiques avec un employé. Donc, est-ce qu'il y a un nombre limite de sessions ou est-ce que c'est par problème ou par question? Alors, c'est ça, je vous tourne la question. Alors, je ne sais pas qui veut prendre cette question-là. Who would like to answer? Oh, Chantal, I see you're off mute. So.
Maybe you would like, Marie-Paul, maybe would like to answer. We're two different EAP. So as for Health Canada, it's a maximum of 8 hours per issue. So this means if you have a personal issue and then you'd like to consult later in the year for, you know, an employee, there's no problem. There's no it's not a cap on the amount of sessions. It's more about by issues. It's up to 8 hours per issue.
Yeah, along the same lines, in our agency, we treat it by issue as well. I believe 6 sessions per issue. Now, that said, when we're talking about coaching or advisory services for managers, it tends to be a few sessions that you'll need to work through, you know, a situation with an employee, or unless it's something very complex, of course. But I've seldom seen a manager use all 6 sessions for a discussion on how to support employees. For anything personal, because you are employees as well, it would be the same as Chantal described, but I believe in our agency it's 6, and maybe Ellen can correct me on that if I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I think the number of sessions will vary from department to department, but usually I think they say it's about an average of 3-4 sessions, and some departments will have a cap. Could be 8, could be 6. So best thing is to contact your provider to find out more. Elizabeth, is there another question?
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. Thanks for answering that. Okay, so the next question would be, would EAP be positioned to help managers on tips on how to transition staff back into the workplace? So for example, someone who recently came back from mental health leave. Donc, est-ce qu'il y a des conseils, des ressources ou est-ce que le PAE pourrait aider les gestionnaires à faire la transition avec un employé qui revient dans le milieu de travail, par exemple, dans une situation où il y aurait eu un congé en raison de santé mentale. Donc, je ne sais pas qui veut prendre la question.
De mon côté, ce serait Michel, je crois, qui pourrait répondre à cette question-là.
Absolutely. So I was going to say, we can definitely help within the scope of the services, always understanding that often a return back to work involves many different players, different supports. And it goes back to mentioning earlier about we're not there to replace other services that already exist. So helping to support managers, labor relations, HR and whatnot, but having a provider to help support what that transition looks like, looking at the mental health piece and giving those tips about what could be helpful, giving space, all those things would definitely be something that we could help provide some further, given the particularities of that. And then otherwise to complement that one-on-one support if need be, if that manager wanted to get some one-on-one support through EAP.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so let me just have another look because I know we're kind of running short on time. So let's see which one. Okay, so if someone requires more than 1 to 8 hours of psychological aid, will the EAP service provide resources for the individual to find something more long-term? Donc, qui voudrait prendre la question? C'est par rapport à, bon, si on épuise le nombre de questions, pardon, pas le nombre de questions, le nombre de sessions pour cette aide du PAE, est-ce qu'on réfère les gens à une solution qui est à plus long terme? Qui voudrait prendre?
Je peux répondre, je crois. Dans le fond, rappelez-vous que les personnes qui offrent les services à court terme dans votre ministère ou avec votre agence partenaire, ce sont des professionnels de la santé mentale. Fait on est toujours, quand on travaille avec un employé ou que ce soit un gestionnaire ou un employé, on a la formation pour faire une évaluation. Donc, si on sait dès le départ que ça va être peut-être une question qui va demander plus de l'aide à moyen et long terme, c'est une discussion qu'on peut avoir avec l'employé. Je peux vous dire, dans mon cas, par exemple, c'est arrivé que je rencontre des employés puis qu'on détermine assez rapidement que ces séances ou le temps qu'on peut accorder ne seront peut-être pas suffisants. Alors, à ce moment-là, on peut faire ce qu'on appelle en anglais du bridging. Donc, moi, je peux aider à trouver une ressource dans la communauté selon les préférences de l'employé. And along with that, I'd say last year during the pandemic, what we were seeing is long wait lists in the community sector. So it has happened that I was able to say support an employee for X number of sessions until they were able to confirm that yes, they have now been able to have a first appointment and with another provider. So yeah, we can. Sometimes our role is to immediately begin the search and help the employee find a more appropriate resource.
That sounds great. Okay, thank you. So unfortunately, that's all the time that's all the time we have for questions right now. That being said, we did see all your questions in the chat, so we will take some time, like Hélène said, to answer the ones that we didn't get a chance to get to. Donc, malheureusement, c'est tout le temps qu'on a pour les questions. Mais comme Hélène l'avait indiqué au début de la séance, on va passer à travers les questions et puis on va vous répondre. So on that note, je vais céder la parole à Hélène pour les mots de la fin. Donc, Hélène, over to you.
Oui, merci Lisbeth. Oui, je sais que certains de nos panélistes avaient des ressources et des outils qui étaient prêts à partager. Donc, on va s'assurer d'inclure toute cette information-là dans le courriel de suivi. So, and the follow-up email will also include resources and tools that you can use, for example, in your conversations with employees, because I know that our panelists had all this information ready to go. So thank you all participants for joining today. The information and tools that were shared will definitely be helpful to all public servants as we try to lead and keep our teams engaged through these challenging times. Thank you as well to Marie-Paul Deveau, Chantal Mallette, and Michelle John for taking the time to talk about EAP services for managers, and all my teammates here at the NMC for coordinating the event. Donc, je remercie également Marie-Paul Deveau, Chantal Mallette et Michelle John d'avoir pris le temps de venir nous parler, et à tous mes coéquipiers de la CNG pour avoir coordonné cet événement. So I'll turn it back to you, Lisbeth.
Oui, merci. Thank you. So, merci à tout le monde pour votre participation. Thank you to the NMC team that supported this virtual talk. And a special thank you to the Federal Youth Network for allowing us to use their platform. And thanks for all of their help, especially you, Marcella. I know you were in the background, so thank you so much. We encourage you to stay connected to the NMC for information on our next events. Donc, joignez-vous à nous pour nos prochains événements. So on September 23rd, we have a virtual talk on the Retain and Gain Career Management of the Public Sector Playbook with CERIC. Donc, le 23 septembre, nous aurons une conversation virtuelle sur le guide Fidéliser et mobiliser, la gestion de carrière dans le secteur privé, dans le secteur public avec CERIC. Then on September 28th, the NMC's BC and Yukon region will host an event entitled Owning Your PMA, an interactive learning event on taking ownership of your performance management agreement and learning and development plan. Ensuite, du 26 au 28 octobre, la CNG tiendra son symposium annuel qui traitera des sujets variés comme l'appel à l'action et le futur du travail. You can follow us on our Twitter handle at NMC_CNG for all updates and registration details. Donc, suivez-nous sur Twitter pour tous les renseignements pour s'inscrire. Until then, best wishes et bonne fin de journée. À la prochaine. Merci.